Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Throws. We're back outside today. Construction has slowed for the moment, I think. Still very much going on, though. But let's talk about what went on this past week. Realistically, there's kind of only two meets we're going to be talking about. And that's because, it makes sense because the European circuit, they had the European Team Championships this week. So the circuit itself was kind of shut down. And then over in the US, a lot of the US-based pros headed up to Idaho for the Ironwood Classic. So two really technically the European Team Championships was three separate meets because they have first, second, and third division. Doesn't really matter for throwers, though, because, Christian Che threw at the second division team championships because Slovenia is just a smaller nation. So the throwers, they went there, they found their marks anyway. And yeah, so we're going to start talking Ironwood. Excellent meet. And let's just not waste any more time. No fluffing about. Let's get right into it. So, come on. There's one place to start for this week, and that's Chase Jackson going 20.95. Breaks her own American record. It's the best throw since August 28th, 2013 for Valerie Adams. She backed it up with a 20.45, and Chase just is genuinely, unstoppable this year, it looks like. She's thrown, this 20.95, she's thrown 20.54, 20.30 a couple other times, I think. She's just putting together these ridiculous marks and these ridiculous series with so much consistency. And I'm going to have a separate video coming out next day or two that's a pre-classic preview. So I'm not going to let myself talk too much about what could be ahead. But it's just, Chase just looks so good right now. And it's impossible to not let yourself get excited about the idea of the first 21-meter throw since July 2012. That's all I'm going to say for that right now. Down the results list, though, there were some really great marks, too, from a couple other American women. Maggie Ewan went 19.69 in round 6 to finish second, and she just, it's so good to see after the way last year went, where, there were times where it looked like she was showing flashes of maybe being able to come all the way back from her surgery, but it didn't necessarily quite work out. But she's back this year all the way, throwing 19 high consistently. It's only a matter of time until she hits 20 again. And it's just really good to see her throwing at this level again. Someone else who's throwing at this level again is Jada Ross, because she went 19.62 to finish third here. It's her best throw since Paris, her first time over 19 meters since the Olympics last year, which is just, you've been waiting on this one. Because, the NCAA indoor season didn't necessarily go how she'd hoped it would, I think. And she ended up throwing, I think, 18.99 or 18.98 at NCAA indoors. And, you were kind of sitting there okay, well, she, only has indoor eligibility. And Worlds isn't until September. She was an Olympian last year. It's probably just a little bit of a slower build into the season for her. But then the first couple Diamond Leagues and the beginning of her true pro career this spring hadn't looked super encouraging yet necessarily. But this, it was a really great series. She breaks 19 on 3 or 4 throws, I think it was. It's the 4th best mark of her career, that 19.62. And it's really nice to see Jada kind of peaking or starting to peak, theoretically, as we get more towards the truly more competitive parts of the summer. And it makes me really excited for what she's going to be able to do in her home circle at Pre this weekend. And then there were 2 more solid marks from Jessica Woodard and Jessica Ramsey. They both threw, I think Woodard threw 18.80 and then I think Jessica Ramsey threw, like, 18:53, which, I mean, they're really strong marks, and, like, they're showing they're in shape enough. I'm still very confused as to what Raven Saunders is planning to do. Like, I don't know if they're gonna just throw once and then show up at US Champs. I don't know what their plan is. I don't know if they're hurt. But obviously that's a huge contender that we haven't seen anything from this year. But Chase having the bye is a really good thing. It's kind of like how she ended up getting the bye to Indoor Worlds, and then I think it was Jessica Ramsey that got the call to come be our third shot putter there. Um, well, like, I mean, it looks like Chase is inevitably gonna win the US title anyway, so really her having a bye only serves a point to open up that 4th spot for the Americans, and, like, when you look at who that might go to, I mean, Maggie seems like a clear number 2. If Jada can keep building this, she's a pretty solid number 3, and then for that number 4, you've got Maya Lesnar, the Jessicas, Adelaide, Raven Saunders if she comes back or if they come back. And it's wide open. And it's going to be so much fun to watch. The shot ring stayed hot for the men's competition a little later on in the day because Payton Otterdahl finally broke the 22-meter barrier twice. He threw 22:01 in round 2, and then I believe he ended up at 22:09 in round 3. And that was it's exciting to see because maybe it's because of the longer season. I feel like I have this conversation every video now. But the 22-meter dam that has just, like, the wall hasn't really been there the last couple years, where it's just like every competition is won in 22 meters. Usually there'd be like 2 or 3 guys over that. But so far we've only seen, if you're counting competitions and not like individual throws, Leo Fabry has thrown 22 meters once. Payton Otterdahl has thrown 22 meters once. Nobody else in the world. I think that might be changing this weekend at pre, just given the field is ridiculous. But yeah, for Payton, it's encouraging to see, and like he's been throwing really well. Like I said a couple weeks ago, I think he might be potentially the favorite for gold after his win in Rabat, I believe, and he's continued that pretty good form throughout another couple European meets, and now he brings it back home, back to the U.S. at Ironwood, and I mean 22:09 is a really good mark. And this year, at least, it's more impressive than in years past. So very exciting stuff from Payton. And then Roger finished second with a solid mark of 21:68. And exciting stuff, Nick Ponzio, 21:04. I kind of forgot how good, because he came back from his suspension last year after the Olympics. And I kind of forgot how well he was throwing at the end of last year. But this season, he's been very open on Instagram. Like, this has not been the start to 2025 that he had hoped for, but he went 21:04 here, which is his first time over 21 this season, and a pretty significant season's best. So I hope he can kind of get more into the form that we saw from him. Obviously, like, pre-suspension would be great, but also just at the end of last year, like, he was throwing really well. I think he opened at like 21:50, and then maybe only one of his like 4 or 5 meets was under 21. So that's just it bolstering the Italian contingent at Worlds. Let's talk about men's hammer now, because there's a good competition and a battle of, assuming Danny Haw continues to build back and is kind of the Danny Haw we're used to seeing by the time USAs roll around. That third spot is going to be interesting because you can assume Rudy and Danny go 1-2. But then when you look at like Tarek, Tyler Williams, and then a lot of the guys that were throwing here, where you had Tanner Berg take the win, 75-13, Kieran McKeague, 75-11, Alex Young, 74-46, Justin Stafford, 73-56. Like, last year, we didn't have a third thrower qualify to the Olympics. We should have we should have 3 throwers in Tokyo this year. It's going to be interesting to see who that third one is, But, like, these are some solid marks out of these guys, and then for Tarek, uh, he's throwing it pre this weekend, which we'll talk about more next video, Paul, don't get sidetracked. But, yeah, it's g I think right now I'd probably lean Tarek for that 3rd spot just because he's been getting better every competition. We've seen the way that he competes, we've seen the way he elevates when he needs to. Um, and yeah, I think and I mean, he only has 4 competitions right now, on his ledger for this year, so he's not on the road to Tokyo, but I'm, like, 95% certain that as long as he doesn't completely flub pre this weekend, he's gonna be inside the world rankings quota at a minimum. So yeah, if I think I like Tarek's chances right now of finishing top 3 at USA's, but there's a lot of guys in this field that we saw at Ironwood this weekend or last weekend that are gonna be really testing him and making sure he needs to bring it if he wants to finish 3rd. Or 2nd or 1st, maybe. I don't wanna disrespect Tarek like that. Then for the women's hammer, it was a pretty strong field too, where you see Deanna Price, 76-82. She continues an excellent season that is also gonna continue at pre next week, and, oh, man, that preview is gonna be so much fun. And then Annette Chikwenwoke, 73-31. Strong marks out of both of them. Good, kinda mark on the timeline as they head back to Eugene this weekend. For discus, there were a lot of US guys, and, like, the US is just gonna be a bloodbath when it comes to US champs because Sam Mattis feels like a lock because 'cause he's been so consistent. Andrew Evans, who took the win here at Ironwood through 64-56, he's in the same situation as Tarek in the hammer, where he's only competed 4 times in the qualifying window, so he's not yet in the road to Tokyo, but he should be as soon as he has his next competition, which I don't think is pre. I'm not sure on that. Um But yeah, so, like, I mean, he's just been really consistent the last couple years, and I feel like he's a pretty safe bet to make the team, but then, like, honestly, anyone other than Sam finishing in the top 3 at USA's is such a hard thing to predict, and we'll talk about someone who might be making it a little less hard to predict later on, um, but there's gonna be a lot of guys that are qualified either through the standard or through the quota, and a couple really strong throwers are gonna get left home, which honestly, for, like, US discus throwing, obviously it sucks for them, but for US discus throwing as a whole, like, that's a good spot to be, where there are competitive, really good throwers that aren't able to make your team for Worlds, which it's a good situation to be in for kinda, like I said, the state of US discus throwing, even though it's not necessarily the most ideal option for those guys that get left out. In women's disc in Ironwood, we saw some nice kind of returns to form, where Lagi Tasaga Collins takes the win at 66-59, and she backs it up with 65-63 and 64-65. This made me so happy to see because her last couple competitions in Europe, I think she failed to break 60. Um, just wasn't looking quite like she had it, I guess. But then she comes out here and just silences any poor, pathetic doubt I had in my mind and just crushes. Like, this is such a good series for Lagi, and it's really, really exciting to see. And now I just hope she's got pre next, which is a big one. And so I hope she can kind of continue to carry that over. But then Veronica Fraley finished 3rd, throwing 64-64, which is her first time over 61 meters since she threw 68 high in Ramona. So that's exciting to see. It's proving that, she's still in form to make, gosh, I think this would be her 4th straight team if she can make it, which obviously is gonna be helped by Lagi having a bye. But someone who might be looking to keep Veronica off the team is Gabby Jacobs, who threw 65 68.66. Excellent mark, backing up her 68-meter throw from Kansas earlier on in the year. And Gabby's now put together, I think, the 5 best marks of her career this year already. So she's just in a form we've never seen her in. And yeah, women's disc at USA's. Loggy has the bye. Val is Val. 3 and 4 are so wide open, it's not even funny. But it's going to be so much fun to see who kind of navigates the pressure of US champs best. And I can't wait for that. We're on to European Team Championships now, and the best competition of the week happened at the first division championship in the men's hammer, where Mihailo Kokon, PB 81.66, Merlin Hummel, PB 81.27, Bence Halash, 80.63, 3 throws over 80 meters, and then Jan Chasanand, 78.45 to take fourth. Holy heck, those are some marks. And that's just, like, men's hammer has just been at such a high level this year. And it's like Ethan said after, I believe, Oslo, where it is kind of the thing where, like, everyone sees how well he threw last year. And it mentally, it's like, okay, if we're, like, actually going to be competitive with this guy, like, we need to step it up. And I talked about kind of the youth movement, I guess. I talked about it on Twitter after this, where Mihailo is 24. Merlin is 22, I think. Ethan's also 22. And then there's just a couple really good, like, U20, U18 athletes that are still rising through the ranks. And, like, men's hammer, it's kind of in one way ending an era, it feels like, of, like, Pavel Fidek, Wojciech Nowicki, the really good Polish throwers, and now this younger generation is just kind of supplanting them so well. I mean, don't get me wrong. Wojciech and Pavel and some of the older guys, like, Bence, I think, is like 28 or 29 maybe, but he's been strong for a couple years. Like, they're not gone at all, so to speak. But it's just so exciting to think about where this younger crop could be in, like, 5 years or so when they're really kind of hitting their physical primes, because 81.66 and 81.27, those are some really, really good marks. For Jan Chasanand, who, like I said, finished fourth here at 78.45, this would have been a competition where I would have really liked to see him place and throw a little better, because, like, he's thrown 80, I think he's thrown 81 plus on 2 occasions this year. And, like, just marks wise, like, he's been the second best thrower in the world behind Ethan. But there was someone else that I think threw 80 in the competition where he threw, like, 81.90 or whatever his PB is sitting at right now. But still, I think he hasn't necessarily been in the mix with the competitions where, like, a lot of the top guys have been, like in Oslo. And then in this one, like, he had a chance to truly make a statement that it's not just he can throw far when it counts. And, 78.45 isn't bad. The construction just started again, so apologies if that comes through. 78.45 isn't bad, but finishing fourth when you're, I think, second on the world list this year, it's just one day. I'm not going to make it into a huge, big thing. I'm not going to say, like, Jan Chasanand is terrible, he has no chance, blah, 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 blah. I'm just saying it would have been nice to see him place a little higher. The women's hammer, she, thank goodness, is never going to go away. Anita Vladarchik throws 73.34 to take down Celia Kosonen, who threw 73.09. Anita turns 40 in August. By the time we go to Tokyo, she's going to be 40, and she's still, like, a legitimate medal threat in a really physically demanding event like the hammer. She's insane. Obviously, she's the GOAT, it's not like it's not insane that it's, like, her throwing these marks. It's knowing the injuries she's had to deal with the last couple years, the way she's built back, and now she's still here, and she's never going away. Anita Wlodarczyk is never gonna retire. She's gonna be throwing 73 or 74 meters until the day she dies in, like, 2150, and that's awesome, and that makes me really excited, and I'm just dropping hints in, like, basically every event for my preview coming up, and she's gonna be at this weekend. She's gonna be pushed by all of the women who are kind of following in her footsteps and the path that she paved, and she's gonna teach these young kids a lesson, I think. So I'm excited to see what Anita does in Hayward this week. Nothing too crazy to report from women's discus. Kind of the only mark that really stood out was another good day for Yorinda. She threw 64-61 to win that first division championship. I think Sandra Elkasevich threw like 62 mid to win the second division. But the men's discus, it was a good one. Unfortunately, Daniel Stahl and Christian Che were at different divisions for their championships, but they both go 68 plus. Mika Sosna threw 66-17 for Germany, which is interesting to note because the way that European team championships work is every team or every country sends one person in each event. And so out of the 5 really good German discus throwers right now, I don't know how the selection works. I don't know if the selection kind of mirrors world selection, but they picked Mika Sosna, and he delivered for them well enough. He finished second at the first division championship. So I think that's worth kind of noting, especially considering that Germany does have a discretionary spot on their team to worlds for that third selection. So this makes me think, even if Mika doesn't have his best stuff at German championships necessarily and can't finish top 2, I think it seems likely if he maintains this form, I think that's a good sign that he could be that third pick no matter what. All that being said, the really good European throwers, Andrew Evans' good day at Ironwood. The best men's discus mark of the week came from Marcus Gustafsson, who threw 69 meters in Ramona. And Marcus, he threw 70-28, I think it was. He broke 70 at a really small meet in Texas that wasn't on the World Athletic calendar. So technically, it doesn't count. But we know it counts. There's also like no video of it. So that was kind of weird. But now, he gets for anyone who is doubting the legitimacy of that mark, 69 meters. That's a pretty legit mark. I mean, obviously he threw 67-something last year at Ramona because he got the standard. That day, him and Joe Brown both got the standard. Was just absolutely awesome. So Marcus gets the standard, and like he's put together a really, really good season to this point, where he's been over 65 multiple times. Obviously now he's thrown 70 and 69. He's been throwing really well, but he's yet to compete outside of Texas or Oklahoma, which, I'm not gonna like knock him for that, because I know for a lot of throwers, travel is hard. Travel is expensive. It's tough to get to meets. So I'm not like blaming him for that. I'm just saying that he's been throwing really well, but he also hasn't been tested as much as a lot of the other throwers, even like some of the throwers he'll be going up against at nationals. And so that's just something to kind of maybe keep an eye on a little bit. Because to this point in the season, I think his worst competition of the year was the competition in Ramona where Mikolas broke the world record at the World Invitational, where it was like all the best guys in the world, 5 guys through 70. Would have been a really good day for Marcus to be able to make a statement. He wasn't in the invitation or the world invite flight, but still he could have done something special, and unfortunately just came up a little short that day. So it's just something to kind of keep in the back of your head. as you get a little closer to USA's. There's not really a ton to report for men's shot from the European Team Championships. I think Leo had the best mark, and I think he threw like 21.68 maybe, which is a really good mark, but for a guy that's already thrown 22.30 this year, like and he's thrown 21 high a lot. Like that's not really moving the needle that much or kind of changing the way we're thinking about him for this season. I do think Leo has I think he's moved ahead of Payton now, and not just because he has the world lead right now, but I think he's starting to show some consistency that I think there's something much bigger on the horizon for him. Maybe Payton will shut me up and prove me wrong this weekend at pre, but right now I think Leo is probably the favorite for gold in Tokyo. But women's shot, really strong competition at the first division where Jessica Schilder goes 2014. Yemi Ogunleye, 1958. And Fanny Roos just continues her excellent season at, I think she's 31 maybe? But career best season still goes 1938. And like I've said it once, I'll say it again. 1938 probably isn't going to make the podium when we get to Tokyo, but it's a really good mark that should get her into the final and maybe scare some of the medalists. So I'm excited to see what Fanny will be able to do as the season continues to roll along. Men's javelin, kind of similar to men's shot at the European Team Championships, where really the only notable performance belonged to Julian Faber, who went 85.15. And realistically, like it's good consistency. 85.15 is a strong mark, but it's the same thing for Leo. Like Leo, you threw 22.30 this year, 21.68. Thumbs up. Good work. Not going to like blow my mind. Julian Weber, you've thrown 91 this year. You've thrown 88 a couple times, 87. 85.15, good mark. He didn't need any more than that. Like he won this competition by like 5 meters, but just not necessarily needle moving for me. Now let's get to women's jav, because women's jav was really interesting. We saw Victoria Hudson. We've kind of been waiting on this from her all year long. 67.76 to take the win at the second division championships. 7 meters better than her season best coming into this year. Like she was throwing like 54 meters at the first couple Diamond Leagues in China. Now she comes out and throws 67.76. World lead. It's a 7-meter season best, but it's also 170 centimeter PB for her. So that's really impressive stuff. And then Sigrid Borgi of Norway finished second, 65.66. Strong mark from her. I believe that's also a PB. And then Adriana Vlagos brought up third in 62.75. And I'm finally not chickening out anymore. It's time for some women's javelin power rankings. So the way I did this is I was kind of going through like the performances from this year and looking for who I feel are like the 7 best women in the world this year. So I kind of came out to that result as Adriana Vlagos, Alina Tzenko, Haruka Kitaguchi, Victoria Hudson, Sigrid Borgi, Yoann Dupleix, and Yan Ziyi. Shout out Yan Ziyi. You're the GOAT. And so then I took their 5 best marks in competition this year. For Haruka and Sigrid, they've each only competed 4 times, so they only have 4 marks. And then I looked at those, and I also looked at everyone's head-to-head record against each other, because everyone has competed against each other except for Sigrid and Yan Ziyi. And so I was doing and like all of these are all the head-to-head records are pretty even for the most part, especially when it comes to who I kind of took as the top 3. So that wasn't super helpful. But this is kind of the way I'm situating them right now. I thought I would maybe come to a different result, but I still think Adriana Vlagos is number 1 this year. She has the second best mark in the world this year, and then the best second, third, fourth, and fifth best marks. She's been throwing the best, and her head-to-head record honestly like shook out better than I thought it would. She's 1-1 versus Victoria Hudson, 2-1 versus Alina Tzenko, 1-1 versus Haruka, 2-1 versus Sigrid Borgi, 2-1 versus Joanne, and then 1-0 versus Yan Ziyi. Like, she's basically lost to everyone once. And she's gone 2-1 against Alina Tzenko, which I think was kind of like the biggest barrier. And she's just been throwing distance-wise. She's been throwing better than anyone else. Like, part of that is carried by her 2 really strong marks to open the season, but she's just really, really good. And the, like, rising to her competition is something she still kind of needs to work on. Like, in a competition like these European Team Championships, where she finished 3rd and the 2 women above her threw really, really well, it would have been, I mean, obviously, to beat Victoria Hudson, she would have needed to throw a PB. So I can't blame her too much on that one. But it would have been nice to see her step up and come away with like a 65, a 67 meter, or 65, 66 meter mark in this one, as opposed to 62, 75. But regardless, I'm still taking her at 1. I think Haruka Kitaguchi is still number 2, ahead of Alina Tzenko, who I have at 3. And then I have Joanne Duplessis. I might have called her Joanne Van Dyke. Joanne Duplessis is her now married name. I have Joanne Duplessis at 5, even though she is, when you look at season's best, she ranks last of these 7 women that I went with, but she's been so consistent. When you look at 62-77, 62-53, 62-35, 61-23, 60-38. Like, that is all really, really good marks. Very consistent marks. And then the women who she's ahead of is because she's 2-0 against Victoria Hudson, 1-0 versus Sigrid Borgi, and 1-0 versus Yan Ziyi. So combining the consistency of her marks and the head-to-head ability to beat the women she was kind of in contention with for this 4th spot, that's why I went with Joanne Duplessis at 4. And I do have the world leader, Victoria Hudson, at 5. And, like, obviously she has the world lead. She has the best throw in the world this year, but that's the only competition she's really looked good in. She can rocket up these rankings. If she comes out, like, her next time out, if she throws well, she's shooting up the rankings. But right now, I'm playing it a little conservative. I'm not buying completely into that 67-76 until I see something similar or another really strong mark or another big win. So I've her at 5 right now, Sigrid Borgi at 6, and then it hurts my heart to do it, but I got to be realistic and put Yan Ziyi at 7. So once again, the rundown for the first edition of Paulie Throws' Women's Jav Power Rankings, definitely subject to change next week in theory. Adriana Vilagos, Haruka Kitaguchi, Alina Tzenko, Joanne Duplessis, Victoria Hudson, Sigrid Borgi, Yan Ziyi. There you have it. All right, well, that is all that I've got for you guys today. It is hot out here. It is loud because they've started construction now. I hope the audio in this video is usable at all, but that's why we have a microphone in theory. But yeah, it was, like I said, it was not a super busy week due to the circumstances of most European throwers were at these European Team Championships. Most of the US-based throwers were in Idaho. But, I mean, still a really, really solid week. Like, we got 3 men over 68 in the discus. We got a 22-meter shot putter. We got an American record in the women's shot put. We got a Jav world lead. We got 3 guys over 80 in the hammer. What more can you ask for from a week of throws? I say that, and then next week is going to give us all of that and so much more because we've got the pre-classic. And like I said, pre-classic preview coming either tomorrow. My idea is to get this video up Wednesday night. Pre-classic video will be either out on Thursday or Friday, and then the competition is on Saturday. And you also have, on the same day as the pre-classic, you also have the Neeraj Chopra Javelin Classic. So pre is going to have every throw except men's and women's jav. And then the Neeraj Chopra Classic. Unfortunately, Anderson Peters just pulled out. Arshad Nadeem was supposed to be there, but some geopolitical conflict got in the way. I think it's honestly kind of like just Niraj competing there, or is like by far the biggest name there. But it'll be really fun to see what he can do in a competition of that magnitude in kind of his home nation. So I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out on that one. But for you guys, keep an eye out for a pre-classic preview coming up. That is all I've got for you. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Follow the podcast on Spotify. P. Hoff Mahoney on Twitter. Paulie Throws on Instagram. Mikolas Alekna is an Oregon Duck now. I forgot to mention that, but that's pretty insane. I'll see you guys next time.